That's a good question. Okay.
Maybe we could go through the shepherded items first.
Yeah.
So, just jumping in randomly, the stabilize rebalance coherence thingy seems to be ready. There is possibly a bug that someone found, but I think that Nico can review that and then we can stabilize.
Okay.
It's the PR at the bottom. That one, yeah.
Yeah, take a look.
But not now.
No, not now. Yeah, I think we're ready to go unless anyone has any like last minute concerns. Yay. What about, so any updates on cost evaluation?
There's nothing that needs like urgent attention.
Okay.
We're making progress.
Is this sort of the same as last time? Did we just not? I can't. Did I clear it?
No, it's different. I opened a few new bugs about promotion, doing sort of the weirder forms of promotion within a const body. So
take a look at it.
Seems like we need to possibly redesign my RFC about constants and array repeats expressions.
I don't agree with that. I think we should be able to implement it roughly as originally envisioned. Mm-hmm. We didn't have rules around promotability.
All right. So I think one aspect that is important is that we stay future compatible with like the runtime version. So that
I feel a bit lost with this conversation. I don't know. Do we want to talk more in detail here, or do we want to just people can read these links and we'll like how settled is it? How much do you think we should all be following along versus take this offline?
I think we can discuss it on the issue. The people who are like Eddie, me, not me yet, Ralph, was Ollie, we are already discussing it. So we can probably continue it there. Does that sound good?
Offline is good for me.
Okay. Well, this is an interesting one. I haven't fully caught up on this conversation, but last week, so in and around the unwind and FFI stuff, there was a sort of confusing to me turn where there was this PR opened, which allows C++ exceptions to safely unwind through Rust code or claims to, and there's some, which is great, it did a lot of important implementation work. But one thing that came up around there was this debate about whether it makes sense to, we had been assuming that extern C would mean no unwinding, but there was a case to be made that that's the wrong default because basically it's the opposite of what C does, for example, if you compile with -f except at least, and that it would make more sense to support unwinding, which isn't that hard to do, and allow people to opt out, and perhaps like if you're using panic equals abort, I don't know, maybe that has some other semantics, but there's been a lot of back and forth. What was surprising to me was that kind of most people like Gunza Blug and Amaniu and other people were arguing more in this direction, which seemed the opposite of what we had been saying for quite a long time. So I haven't really caught up with it, but the one thing I'd like to float out here is like, I think the main objection to permitting unwinding through FFI boundaries is around dead code elimination. Perhaps there's a correctness question of whether people expect unwinding, although I don't know. I'm kind of curious to take a quick temperature or maybe have people give me their thoughts on if this would be a horrible change. They're dead against it if I have their concerns that I don't understand.
I'm not thrilled about doing a 180. I've left comments on like the Zulip discussion.
Yeah, it seems surprising.
So I feel like that's a strange default because I have a hard time imagining Rust code that would correctly handle exceptions coming from across an ABI boundary.
I don't know. Yeah. So there is a question of like, there's a correctness argument around, there's sort of two safety arguments, and I think you're making one of them, which is especially for FFI, which tends to have unsafe code in its surroundings, it's really important to be sort of aware of unwind safety. And a lot of people may not expect unwinding across this boundary. Is that kind of the argument?
Yes, but also just in general, like arbitrary unwinding across Rust code isn't something that we've well defined, right?
Well, that would, what do you mean? I mean, we would be defining
Like,
it. That would be the point.
what would we be defining that to be? Like, you would expect drop hooks to still run everywhere?
For sure. Yes.
The PR itself says that the drop hooks run, but the catch unwind does not work. Like, it just ignores catch unwind. So I don't know if that's what you mean by what we're defining here, but that's definitely, I can imagine code that be written that would be very surprised by that.
And ignores means pass through in this case.
Yes, I think so. As opposed to abort. Yeah, I think it's
that. Yeah, I think catch unwind has been. There is some debate about this. It's sort of an orthogonal question, but if it affects people's opinion, I think it will be important. Like either way, we have to say what catch unwind will do when an exception goes. I think it can be set up either way.
I mean, we don't have to say what catch unwind does in these cases if we say that these cases are just undefined behavior, right?
Yeah, but we're not, like, we're going to support unwinding at some point, whether we make it the default or something you opt into. And then we have to define the behavior, right?
Okay.
But we're saying that it's unspecified behavior, right? Like
at present, yes. But eventually we would want to specify it, right?
But like, yeah, but like in the previous discussions, there was the point that we didn't want to define the Rust unwinding strategy.
This is not. There's nothing in here that defines.
This isn't Rust panics, right? This is
right.
We're just talking about exceptions getting thrown or unwinding triggered by non-Rust code, right?
I mean, it doesn't define how we implement it, but it says that if an exception propagates, destructors run, and catch unwind does not catch it. That's what the current PR does. We could implement that by, as we do today, by integrating tightly with the native mechanism, or you could integrate it by catching the exception, translating it to some other thing, propagating it in your own way. But it's sort of not user visible. But,
has anybody done any measurements on how much worse this makes code gen?
No.
I think it hasn't built yet.
Okay.
And we don't really have a good way to. So we have a good way to test the perf for the compiler, but we don't have a good way to test code size on large scale.
You just have to pick some projects, presumably.
Yeah. I mean, and still for, well, I guess that's a question. So on panic equals abort code, exceptions from Rust code are clearly not well defined, right? Does this mean that we would still need to generate unwind hooks for exceptions coming from non-Rust code? Because that seems.
I think what we would do in this case is, at least what we had been saying, is that we would abort if an exception came across a boundary. And if an exception makes it into Rust code, we would abort, essentially.
So every FFI boundary has to have a harness around it catching unwinding and aborting?
Right.
That seems expensive to me.
If you want to make it a guarantee, is it? It's, I don't know. It's not a lot of code, but
it seems so. Going back a bit, it seems like the new suggestion essentially is what's implemented on nightly. It's like unwind, abort, being unwind, allow being the default, and then we have like unwind, abort that is just renamed to no unwind. But it seems like we wanted to get away from that, and now we're going back to it.
No, I think the difference would be that, for one thing, we don't behave right now. Our behavior with respect to foreign exceptions is not very consistent across platforms. And for another, we say it's undefined behavior right now, whereas we would be saying we would not be adding no unwind attributes and so on, right?
Yeah. Well, and there's sort of a funny thing that you start wanting here, which is the like z panic equals abort and f no accept, right?
Right. I think there's a question of like, I'm not exactly sure whether, for example, I don't think that we necessarily have to say that z panic equals abort. Like whether it actually aborts or makes it UB to unwind is an interesting question.
Right.
Right. We could do either
Yeah,
one, but
that is an interesting question.
That would I would certainly address your concern about code size.
But it does. It addresses my concern, but it does mean that you could now write Rust code that would unsafe Rust code that would be sound when compiling for the default panic mode. But for panic equals abort, the code would now be unsound.
Yes.
Which makes me very uncomfortable. Because I mean, there are cases where the reverse is true, but I think that would be the first case of that being true, right, today.
I think that seems like a go to me, as like something that we should not make like a normal part of an expectation. Like I think that unsafe code should be, if it exposes a safe API, it should be safe under every panic mode.
Yeah, I agree.
This would like any FFI code would now potentially become UB under like, or I guess to know that this FFI code never panics.
So no. I mean, it's not that any FFI code becomes UB, but it's if you don't have a way, if you either don't say explicitly that it can't panic, like presumably there would also be some way to say that it can't. Or you could imagine there being, as in C, like a no except. But yeah, okay. So I want to just write this down so I understand. So prefer link the code. So you're saying the concern is basically that you could have code that uses extern C, which throws exceptions under z panic equals abort. If we made that UB, then this code would be unsound by definition, sort of. Should an exception propagate? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's weird.
So some check.
Whereas otherwise, by default, that would be a safe interface, right? Which, or a like.
Presumably, if it's expecting and handling the exception correctly.
I'm a bit surprised that Z panic is still Z flag.
It's not really a Z, it's C. It's just me typing wrong. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I will propagate these concerns around into that document and try to understand better what makes any change. But I think it seems like the consensus in this room is still that something like the vast majority of, regardless of C's precedent, the vast majority of FFI calls do not unwind. And thus, we would prefer to have it be that you explicitly indicate when you do expect unwinding, then the reverse. Is that correct?
That is certainly my belief.
I would also, I think, like having it in the ABI string makes the type system understand the distinction, and I think that's useful.
Well, that's true either way. It's just a question of whether you write C unwind or C no accept, right, or something. But yeah. You can.
Because you could imagine having to.
No, I don't think so, because the proposal isn't that we would have a different ABI string for the opposite.
That's an orthogonal part of that's an orthogonal part of the proposal, right? I agree with you that the ABI string is better than random attributes.
Actually, so that's an interesting clarification, though. I want to make the the argument here is over what today's default should be, not whether we should still have both options. There would still be a way to specify um, no, like this function specifically is no except. You would just have to do it everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't know about other people, but I would personally just write that everywhere. Like that would.
Yeah. So the argument is sort of C got it backwards, basically.
I have almost never written bindings to a C library that had like well-defined unwinding in its API. I would say that's not true for C++ libraries, which there are exceptions, but C++ libraries you generally already have to wrap in a C API boundary, right?
Right. I think I find this argument kind of persuasive that regardless of, first of all, I don't think C programmers have a really strong expectation around this. Or like, I don't know, at least, in other words, the argument for being corollary with C is kind of weak, but that indeed unwinding does require extra auditing and it's unusual, so it makes sense to call it out.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take it back. Din trait, I'm going to move on so we have time. Din trait, no major updates, except that I've made some progress. But for some reason, I'm getting weird ices that I don't understand.
Stabilize the prop marker generating macros items. It seems to be done, so we can remove it.
Yay.
I can probably remove the stabilize view balance coherence as well.
Yeah.
We can do that next time.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sorry.
Let's remove it. Just thinking that I better add it to my own to-do list though to see it through.
Yeah.
Well, let's leave it until it's actually stabilized. Okay. Grammar working group.
So,
no.
You're next. Do you want to say anything?
No, we don't have any big updates.
Cool.
Just progress as usual.
Okay. Cool. I'll stop editing the same place, central editing, and move down. So nothing too much here. We had, I don't know what's going on with 65338, add implicit named arguments. Actually, I want to I want to skip over this one. I want to talk a little bit about bang because it felt like we didn't finalize this last time. And I'm worried if we leave it to the end, we'll get stuck with it. So does that seem reasonable? As you all recall, there's a PR here to stabilize bang. We talked about it last time. I don't really know at this point. I don't know how we're going forward with this, and I'd like to know. I'd like to work out, like, are we driving this? What's happening?
So the thing is, one thing you said last week was that it wouldn't be too difficult to add a lit. And I think, from my perspective, the best thing to do would just be to do that, and then we can finish it. All of it.
I think what I was imagining was a lint that triggered on fallback would be easy. That would be probably way too coarse, and we'd have to iterate a little bit. That's a sort of development side thing. So I don't know who, Central, do you have time? Like if I were to mentor you through doing that, would you be interested in driving that? Or is that someone else who is?
Yes, well, I would need to learn a new part of the compiler, but yes, I think so. I can reprioritize some other work I'm doing. But I would need to have some help maybe.
Okay. I mean, that's one thing we can do. What are we going to get out of this lint? What do we expect? We're gonna
People can run it on their own code and stuff, I think.
okay.
So
we're
we can't,
expecting.
It's mitigation for the fallback potentially causing undefined behavior. The breaking change that we're making.
Right. But doing it with Crater like isn't really possible because like Apple has weird policies around licenses and Max and CI doesn't work well.
Specifically, I mean, the main thing is like Simone had like some pretty reasonable like we need to have like if we're going to make a breaking change that we know causes undefined behavior in like real code that exists, we should have tools to help people find that.
And are you fine with the list?
How yeah, okay. I think we have to figure out exactly how precise it needs to be, but we can work with that. Do we want to consider, do we just want to wait on that? Do we want to consider stabilizing Bang and work on the lint and fallback separately?
I think that we should. Like, I think that that's actually probably what's more productive to talk about in this meeting, because I know that we don't agree on that.
So the first point I would make is that had I not made this PR, I think it would have just sat for 2 months and no one would have like, oh, we need to stabilize this now.
But that's like, it's because the main reason to stabilize Bang would like, we've already had to work around the fact that we haven't stabilized Bang and introduced the unfallible type. Like,
sure, so it's not as
years now for like blocking a change that has like really material like benefits to like the API for like a fallback change that is a breaking change that causes UB, which like the material benefits of which, based on our conversation the last meeting, I didn't really find that persuasive. And like, I'm not against making the fallback change, and I think that if like it basically, if Simone's happy with the tooling, then I'm definitely happy with it, and happy to make the change. But the situation with the rest of the like things we like to stabilize, just stabilizing Bang, is that Simone already tried to work around the problems with the fallback change by proposing to stabilize the part that doesn't introduce any like breaking changes. But because like the Ling team blocked that on wanting to make the fallback change, he then went and found a different workaround of making the infallible type and stabilizing that in the center library. And like, we've just been like working around not able to have this API for years, and it's been blocked on like no one really being willing to implement this fallback thing. And I think it's not reasonable to keep like blocking on this fallback thing. I think it's already been unreasonable since February, and I think it's.
Well, I'm saying that I've changed my mind and I would be willing to implement the lints. So
yeah,
seems...
I mean, I also think it's unreasonable to keep blocking. So
but like, I think it's great
if the lint thing works out, then great. Let's do the fallback. I'd really like to see the fallback, but otherwise, I'm fine checking my box on things.
I definitely think that like you should drive implementing, if you want a fallback change, you should implement the like tools necessary, but holding like that we can't move forward on the things that are not actually blocked on the fallback change does not seem like seems like inappropriate. And like you said in the last meeting that you thought that the introducing Bang was not worthwhile without the fallback change. And so I'd like to talk more about like that view, because I don't agree with that, and I would like to like hear more about it.
So I think the current state where Bang is not a type, sort of like if Bang is a proper type and the fallback is not Bang, I think that's very confusing. It's like the opposite of what
so I think central. I sympathize with that, and I agree that like that's sort of like semantically that's what I think is wrong. Like I think that's wrong. I think that's not the behavior that I would want in the language, right? But I also don't think that it's going to ruin too many people's day, and certainly it's going to be far less convenient, like less of a problem for those people to have a sort of not what you would necessarily want fallback, then it would be to not have access to the never type at all, which is currently sort of the status quo. I mean, I don't know how strongly you feel about this, but
I think I think that like the most pressing reasons to have like, the bang the never type has with try from and stuff. The pressure to stabilize bang is much lower. So
because of
waiting a
core
while.
convert infallible.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
So,
I don't use core convert infallible for things that aren't about fallibility. Is the like I use a separate never type today.
Right, and that's what everyone's doing, and that means that they are not like interconvertible.
Right.
It would be if everyone just used bang.
Right. So everybody just has like this some other type.
It would be like if you had to create a new unit type every time you wanted to use unit, because every unit type had a name that gave it like some semantic meaning.
So is the argument that introducing infallible already got us a lot of the benefits of bang?
yes.
Well, it unblocked things, like having one in the standard library unblocked the standard library on things that needed bang types too.
Yeah. I mean, an unblocked try from, but there are lots of places where I want to use bang that have nothing to do with try from, and I don't use core convert infallible there.
Okay. I also think that for me, one of the really compelling arguments is that, like, it's sort of interesting actually that because I would think that this would persuade you more central from your usual. It's a consistency thing that we already allow bang in return position, even though it's.
I know, you're right about that. I do feel that it's a consistency improvement, but at the same time, I feel like if bang is a proper type and the fallback is like units, it makes it even weirder. So it's like, yes, you're right about.
Can I make a counter argument to that?
Can I propose it? Oh, go for it, Nico.
I just want to make one minor counter argument, which is that I'm not saying we shouldn't do the fallback, but I don't think the fallback is a clear win because of how fallback integrates. I think the classic example from my doc was this one that came to do with deserialization, where if you run this code, like, and you don't constrain what type this is here, today it falls back to unit, and it basically gets into the fallback path, and the reason is because try winds up desugaring to a match, and one of those arms is an infallible one, or is it falls back to bang basically, and that takes.
Does it applies to question mark as well, right?
It does, yeah. And and the reason I'm bringing this up only is that my point is that it's not like this fallback only ever affects dead code. This is a case where it affects live code. Granted, weird and not very great live code, and that's why I think it's kind of okay. But it's like, yeah, maybe it would be better, but it's not an entirely open and shut case in my opinion. That's all I'm saying.
Falling back to unit here doesn't seem very.
Really, no fallback. No fallback would be my preference. Unfortunately,
no fallback here makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is sort of interesting because it's using like return type generics, and like possibly if we had like full flexibility, we could have designed better fallback rules that would error here.
And unfortunately, this is the case I tried for a while. I don't know how to change it. I don't think we can. But basically what I'm saying is, yes, you're right, Central, but as first of all, I think we wouldn't necessarily land there if you want to keep pushing on it. But secondly, like if we did land there and someone were to say, but shouldn't it be bang? I think the argument would be, well, A, history, B, it's sort of fallback is weird and not that great anyway. But I just don't know how much you'll even notice, honestly. But
this feels like a really weird special case to me.
But it's just like
I mean, there are a bunch of there was a handful of examples like this, right? A lot of these have already been changed, but I don't know what the objective C case is, but I bet it's something similar, where fallback is leaking out through say.
Yeah, it's similarly a return type generic that is being Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but like central, I think though, like it's like great for you to drive, like making it the tooling necessary to make the fallback change if you like really believe in it. But it just doesn't seem like never has like really practical use cases that we like would like immediately, and like blocking on making a breaking change that like the breaking change is blocked on never existing, but never is not blocked on the breaking change happening.
So I have a question for you then. So if I do implement the lint, are you fine with like switching fallback?
My opinion is basically like definitely if Simone's happy, I'm happy, and if Simone's still not happy, I would like evaluate the situation like with more thought, and possibly like Simone is like my limit basically at where I'm at.
In either case, can I bring up that I feel like whether never type is stabilized is an inappropriate tool for sort of pressure pointing boats.
That's sort of like what I see as sort of like the larger procedural issue with the way this is being done.
Like I'm not really interested in holding the feature hostage. I'm raising my hand as like the person who put the concern on the original proposal of stabilizing just bang without fallback, because I thought that like in everybody's head that was tied to the fallback issue, and that the fallback would sort of get dropped on the floor. But having Central step up and say that you're interested in implementing the lint, and that's something that's I'm assuming is you're like you seem very passionate about the fallback thing far more than I ever was. So I have faith at this point that you'll actually go through and like implement something there and like try and see motion on this. And so I feel comfortable saying that like I don't think we're going to forget about it, and I think I would rather have a stable never type than not have a stable never type. And whether or not
my concern, yeah. So I mean, I do have concerns about like having stable never type, but not the fallback. But I also have concerns about like, I mean, if I do the actual work, I don't want to see like a concern on something that is not realistic to implement from Simone, and then we don't change the fallback.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I can't see that. But I mean, I guess that's a point where you have to trust your fellow Lang team members to be like reasonable humans.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Right. And try and work with you. Like, and I think everybody here is trying. So.
Yeah. And I think like.
I will change the PR to remove the fallback change.
Yeah, but like so to be more like concrete, Central, it seems to me like maybe like if someone posted a counter argument, I could be persuaded differently. But like the lint does seem to me like it would be enough. Like Objective-C has made a non-breaking change to the latest version to make it impossible, like to require you to avoid these errors. Like having tooling that we can tell people if you are getting a weird like bug, it's possible that it was this breaking change and you should run this lint and it will tell you. And then I think the only other thing that I would like to see is, but I think this is what people are already doing, connected to Objective-C crate, is that like making PRs to known crates that are afoul of it. And I think that's already happening.
Yeah. So, hey, Boats, would you mind writing up those comments like in a comment on GitHub? Just so
yeah, I mean, it seems great. If Central will like change the PR to do the thing, then I'll just remove the concern with the comment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I will do that.
I'm just saying, like, it would be helpful to have those steps outlined so that we know, like, when we've fulfilled them and can't be like, there's not later an argument about whether or not there's been.
Yeah, definitely.
I would like that.
Can I just confirm that I understand the conversation that just happened? We basically collectively agreed that we are willing to decouple the stabilization of bang from the change to the fallback semantics, and thus Central can independently work on this lint that'll be attached to a hypothetical change to the fallback, but that can happen at its own pace independently of landing never, stabilization never, faster. That's what we just agreed on,
Yeah.
right? Or not? Okay, thank you.
I think it's like this. I think
20
this is,
minutes left on the plan.
does this sound, I just want to write this down for while we're in the moment.
Yeah.
We need a lint
So yeah,
that
see what already happened. Oh yeah.
can enable to find out or to diagnose if their behavior is related to this. And we need continued progress. This is sort of unknown trouble crates, but we have already kind of got that, or we need like, we have this already more or less.
Yeah, like the root of the problem has been solved, and then it's more like people who are using it that
right,
like making PRs to create their,
Cool. 20 minutes. So let's speed up a bit.
Oh, actually, can we finally clarify what the deal was with whether or not we would be making core convert infallible and alias for bang?
Yes. As far as
I know that's technically a choice, but I actually feel pretty strongly about that, so I don't know.
I thought it was I didn't think there was any controversy.
Oh, okay. I thought there was some.
But then it's a libs thing then. That's the part, and that's what Simone mentioned, is that if you're going to do that, then you need to include libs team.
That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, we can do that.
I think the only libs opposition that I heard was related to fallback, so I don't.
Yeah,
think...
and libs is not doing that. So as far as I know.
Okay, great.
The concern is purely procedural. I'll just talk to Simone, but I don't think it'll be an issue.
Great.
Okay. Let's see. Where are we?
So we could jump. We can jump. I think that was good use time. There's two. We can either. This we already discussed. We've discussed this must-use thing a few times. What's happening with this? Why do we keep talking about this?
Well, there were some changes, and there was a new creator run, and there's a new data.
Okay.
I feel like the new version of this has a lot of spurious warnings. Specifically, linting on like every instance of drain is ungreat.
It feels very great to me.
What can someone summarize what changed?
Well, well, the new creator run
what was the
more
analysis?
Clearly segregates the new cases from like the old cases, from the existing cases, I think.
What changed in the analysis? Oh, I see.
It was like thousands of crates because it was like producing other warnings that were not like the original creator run was basically.
Well, I know, but I'm trying to figure out what we changed before we did the creator run. I guess we made it opt-in. Is that what happened? Or something?
No, I think it just special case things for the purposes of creator running.
Like the original creator report was just wrong. So I think it's what happened. So
I see. So it's still the original version, which is any struct that contains a must-use is now infected as must-use.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's talk about the drain thingy. Well, personally, if I would read self.drain and it did that, I wouldn't like understand that dropping it on the floor removes everything from it.
I mean, it says that in the docs.
That's what drain does, no?
That's most of my calls to drain are like, drop everything after some length.
Sure, it says that in the docs, but would you understand it without?
If anything, that diagnostic you see there is actually misleading then, right? Because reading that, I'd think, okay, this is a no-op.
Right. I feel like the warning here is actually more confusing than helpful.
Like the warning's wrong. Like
yeah.
Which seems like what you might expect would be something like if we had a more idiomatic way or something.
Like I kind of see your point that because it's weird that drain is an iterator that does things without being run through like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of an argument that drain is sort of a weird function, but like
Isn't it possible
So
to
this is
special
like
case?
incidental, right?
Isn't it possible to special case the diagnostic for just rate?
Not must use.
No, just changing
Yeah,
the
but I
string
think
on must use.
Needn't use.
But this is sort of been
This is
like
sort
you
of
could
the
also
point.
special case your types by adding must use to them. Like you could do the like the opposite already exists.
True, but that's more work, a lot more, isn't it?
Well, I mean, if they only found 23 crates that even have code, then maybe not. Like most of the crates they found were code that are using drain, which is would be accepted from this.
Fair enough. That's a good point.
Like I mean, I think I'm not like super against like never like I'm not like hard against this change, but I think that it definitely needs an RFC because to me it seems like we're changing the semantics of the must use attribute. Like right now must use like it's sort of like making must use into an auto trait, right? Where it sort of like leaks into like anything that contains a must use is also must use. Like, should definitely be an RFC where we have like a larger discussion about it, not a PR.
Right.
And I'm kind of like not convinced that it's a worthwhile change based on these results.
Yeah, I mean, I think I caused this by starting the conversation around making tuples must use, right?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. Must use. But I feel like that is a case where like you would not be able to put must use on a tuple of a certain specific set of types, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I find I'm somewhat unconvinced by this change.
Maybe we could do it on like unique
Structural types
or something. If we do it on unique, then it would affect box and friends. Maybe that's enough.
You want to make like a box of a result into a must use.
Right.
I mean, I'd be fine with that, but like,
Seems like we could special case or have a way to have a must use that is like a box to opt in.
Be some attribute that means like if all my type parameters are must use, then I'm
right, or an option of a must use or a something like that. I'd be fine with those.
Yeah, I think it's more when you're like writing a struct and you have a field that's a result. Right now, like that's just like an easy way to like have like right. Otherwise, like it's an internal aspect of how your struct is implemented. Like in the case of drain.
But the fact that we're discussing like adding transparent or something feels definitely like RC territory.
Yeah.
So that's where I think like an RFC would be like right. I would like give us an opportunity for these ideas to like get us on the thread.
Is anyone inclined
to? Idea comes out.
Is anyone inclined to land this PR as is?
I'm not. I think these are pretty.
I think the answer is pretty much no. So shall we say that we should close this, and if we want to push on this, we can ask for an RFC or some sort of design proposal.
Seems good.
And maybe recommend some of these things that have come up here. Like,
the only other thing I would add.
I don't think it necessarily has to be a stable feature of the language either, right? Like having this for like, hey, like, do we want must use for like box of must use types? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, we could do Rust the must use or something.
Right.
But can anyone write up his notes? So they're both of you, maybe. I don't know.
One of you or I will, but I'd rather someone else does.
Sure, I can leave a comment.
Thank you.
Cool.
Let's see. So we're done with this. The fully integrated derived helpers thing.
This is just, there's a small amount of fallout that came from this.
FCP last week.
Yeah. I need to like.
Didn't we land it or not? No. Okay.
No. Yeah, it was FCP, but I think I didn't feel very sure about our rationale for FCPing. It was more like, okay, why not? So I think I will need to read it in detail, but that can be done, I think.
Okay.
And votes as well. Not just me.
So
Thanks,
it's 48 after. Under what conditions can you implement copy for a union? Seemed like there was rough consensus here that's saying that you could implement copy if all variants had copy types.
yeah, that's the current behavior as well. So
That seems
if
okay.
we decide that we're fine with this, then it's basically FCP merge or closing or something. I guess we can just FCP merge it.
Yeah.
Just for the so that the community can object or something if they. On the other hand,
it's also a conservative path. So
yes,
let's do it. Let's merge it. Someone want to write it?
I can do it.
Okay. Okay.
Let's see, where are we?
The lint.
Can we talk? Yeah, 10 minutes.
You want to jump to something else?
No, we can talk about it. Yeah.
So overlapping ranges lint. Currently, we warn if the endpoint of one and the endpoint of another overlap. This was narrowed down from a broader thing where it warned over any overlap. And now the question is, do we want to warn for partial overlap? We know we don't want to warn for subsets because that's considered useful. I don't really care. It's my opinion. But
the code is basically written, so it's if you want to get it easy.
I think the case that, I guess the main use case that Josh was bringing forward, which sounded pretty convincing, was sort of specializing, like having a general purpose fallback and then specializing various subsets of it.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really apply here, I guess, not very clearly.
I guess it's maybe if you have like guard or something, it's more likely, but it could be even without the guard.
You can imagine it. You have some constants. You want to be like using them, and they happen to partially overlap. But
it's like kind of more like maybe Clippy territories.
Yeah.
Is it possible to implement this like in Clippy in a good way, because it's like fairly involved in the match checking code? It's not like any links.
Maybe just
be interesting
we can
to
always
run it.
Allow by default links.
I was wondering about that. Clippy could turn it on by default when using Clippy driver.
Or even just, but just in general.
Yeah, then.
But what's the point? And it's just code we got to maintain that nobody uses.
Yeah. But that might have to do more to do with our like fact that we don't advertise them. Like people don't use Clippy because they're implemented in Clippy. They use it because Clippy pushes the people who should use it.
Mm. Oh, it would be nice to have like a website for the lints we have in the compiler actually.
Yeah, like I think that like more like awareness around the things that you could add if you want to would be
Wonderful. Anyway,
I feel like we could accept this and change our minds later if we want to. It's linked, so we could also like decide to do this when more people ask for it. So
I also think I would be somewhat persuaded by a creator run that showed me bugs or not bugs. But
yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Should we say?
Yeah, I think we should write that.
Okay. I'm not going to write it right now. It'll take forever. All right. So no clear consent conclusion, but Those crater run might be helpful. Feels like Clippy territory. Could imagine use cases, but not that strong. E.g., two ranges that happen to overlap. And you want to test, want to give one priority. E.g., exactly the thing we're linting against. But okay. I don't think we're going to do arc drop today, because except to say someone should do their homework.
Right. Going back to the nominated PRs, there's two.
Oh yeah.
Add implicit named arguments and turn the empty block most important. Something into a lint.
For the first one, I think that like Kuderhaus is right. I think this is a great idea, but it should be an RC.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's our conclusion.
I'll post.
Cool.
Okay. I also agree it's plausibly libs.
Yeah, I think
it's actually probably true.
I think it's both.
It's sort of like mildly built into the compiler, but anyway. I'd be happy to have libscale carry it, but I'm okay.
It seems like just a quick like roundtable. Do we think this is a good idea? I like the idea personally.
Yeah.
Do you mean this one?
I think it's great.
Yeah, I've wanted it.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, I'm doing x equals x or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
What I really want is that if you could put little mini expressions in there, maybe simple expressions. Maybe it should be. While we're doing this, if it's a single identifier and there are no arguments, then use it as a default to identifier equals identifier. That would be awesome. But because that's what I actually want.
It seems like the hygiene question is dealt with as well and seems sensible.
Yeah, it doesn't seem problematic.
Yep.
All right. So we are generally positive, but felt it should be an RC. Sounds good. I'm going to post my crazy idea. Resolve. Turn the non-empty glob must import something error into a lint. I think this broke some things.
So you can jump, it broke like one thing, but you can jump to...
We made it an error, I guess, to have a glob that doesn't actually import anything for some reason. Is that?
I think this is fallout from interaction with something else. This thing is not to blame directly.
Okay.
Reading Petrochenko's rationale for the existence of the error, it feels to me like there's a good reason why it exists.
It doesn't feel very convincing to me, but I think a lint is appropriate, personally.
But why do we not have a lint for the single case then?
Because there you said exactly what you wanted. I don't know, to me star expands to, I realize it's not exactly how it works in the mechanism, but like because of precedence, but intuitively it feels to me that star expands to some number of names, which could be none. And if it is, and maybe, maybe it's not, but like that's how it works. So it's equivalent to.
So basically the regular expression argument that Petrochenko is making at the end.
Right, or kind of bash star, right?
I mean, interpreting, yeah, I suppose, but I feel that's very literal, like syntactic interpretation of star as 0 or many.
Doesn't bash star turn into a literal star if it doesn't actually match anything? I don't know if that
No,
analogy
so
is
who
an ideal one.
cares? It does, you're right. But like, I don't know. I don't expect an error. And I think the reason is I think of this as shorthand for putting however many individual imports I needed to make it work. But
Right, it's not like this. It's not like you're using plus as the syntax, right? That's
right.
Yeah, but
star is zero or
I'm
many.
not. Can somebody convince me that this should be an error? Like why?
That's what we're discussing.
Why do I care if it's an error rather than a warning?
Well, there's one rationale is that if you read
this comment, it's basically saying you could think of prefix something as I feel like you could think of it as a filter. And so foo would be like, I select the item from prefix that matches foo, and star is I select the items that match any items. And either way, for all filters, it's an error if it comes to 0. But I feel like what that's saying is it's an error because under this way of thinking, it should be an error, but not because it needed to be an error. But like there's some other part of the compiler that gets unblocked by this being an error or not being an error, which I would find more persuasive.
So,
but like as a user, like what experience do I want? Like
that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Like I feel like that.
I mean, I think you definitely want a warning at least because you want to.
Yeah, I'd appreciate a warning, but like
you expect there to be something, but
yeah,
right.
That's what the PR.
But you could be prototyping, and so it'd be great if this would be like if you're prototyping this, you wouldn't want an error.
Yeah, like if that's only a problem with my code, like great, let it compile.
Right. So I think we want to merge this PR, which turns it into a warning because somehow it became an error. The only question would be, is it a future compatibility warning? I think it shouldn't be. It should just be a warning.
No, it's one phrase.
The past compatibility warning.
Right. I mean, we're not intending to make this a hard error in the future, right? Like,
yeah,
that's what I mean. I don't think we should ever make this.
So the thing that so if you look at let's see the bullet from the second bullet from the bottom.
I have to write this.
Can you do the review some other time?
Nope. All right.
We should just make a tidy lint for that.
Yes. But what? Sorry, what do you want me to pull up on the screen?
So the second bullet from the bottom.
On his comment?
Yes. So they make a comment about something being harmful for the import resolution convergence. And that doesn't apply to globs for now? Or?
That's what I'm interested in finding out. They don't say that it does. I don't know how it does. I would
like to know more about that before making a decision.
Let's ask about it. All right. So the consensus is we feel like intuitively it would be a warning, or that would be what users want. But if there's some other argument like that it's helpful for name resolution in some other way, that we would like to know.
Yeah.
I also think the backwards compatibility rule applies here. Like, there's not a strong argument to change it. Yeah, but it's just why? Like, there's okay. So
wait, now I didn't get what you said. There is what by backwards compatibility thing.
Currently, we don't give an error, like currently in stable. I don't think.
We do. I think.
No, I don't think so. Because I thought that was the whole point. There was a regression, and it changed. That's why we made it a warning to not make it a regression.
No, I think that Petrochenkov just felt like it was inconsistent that we have an error right now. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think we have an error right now.
I don't think there's any regression going on at all. This is
Nico,
just,
I
I'm not even
appreciate
sure
you.
someone else found
Continue
it.
to use
No,
self-tone.
I am correct. There's no error.
Interesting.
Now try
Great.
another.
Well, then we definitely shouldn't make one.
Wait, add something to the
Wait, put a
module.
private item in there.
It's also no
There's
error
an
on
error
nightly, so
only
I don't know what's going on.
Wait, add a private item to fill.
Okay, I see. This error is on nightly? No.
Oh, no, pub. Make it a pub use. It also has to be a pub use. I think this is so specific.
What? I'm sorry.
Wait,
No.
just
All right,
copy this user's literal example. Wait, they have a pub super. Is that wait?
Okay, I have no idea even what we're talking about. But this example is like super complicated. What example? Pub use superstar. Oh my god.
No, it's the example B in 62334.
Okay. Okay, this is an error, and now we're saying you prefer it to be a warning.
I mean, it seems really weird that all the other examples don't do anything at all.
I don't care about this. I don't even understand this example. Okay, I don't feel like I've been talking about something completely different than what is actually the discussion this entire time. But
I
all right, very good.
This is something weird about how pub super is implemented.
Should we like book a meeting on the all hands for Petrochimov to explain name resolution to all of us sometime?
Maybe. All right, I gotta go. In any case,
could we
the time.
just real quick? Next meeting, could we talk about the Turbofish RFC, specifically how to unlock it?
If Scott is here, otherwise it doesn't feel very...
No, I don't want to talk about the substance of it. I want to talk about the fact that in January, I said I was locking it for a few days because it was too heated and it's still locked, but I don't really, I would like the linking to unlock it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I see.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's note that for next time. I'll put it at the top so I actually see it.
Yeah.
All right.
And
see
we're
you.
out of time. See you.
Bye.